Guests, may I invite all of you to take a seat now and get settled down. We'll be starting very, very shortly, right about now. I hope everyone had a good rest yesterday or perhaps explored the streets of Singapore and you're feeling refreshed for a fruitful day of discussions today. So we'll first begin with a recap of yesterday's discussions, led by Professor Dale Barker, which will be giving us the recap, Director of the Centre for Climate Change, Singapore. So Professor Barker, please. Thank you. Oh, you can use that one.
Oh, okay.
Which one do you prefer?
I'll use this one.
You prefer this one?
Yeah. Thank you. Morning, everybody. Yeah, I'm not going to stay more than a few minutes here. I want to get on with the next session, but I was asked to do just a brief recap on yesterday, particularly yesterday afternoon. So just the first, I've got 3 slides here. The first thing, I just recap on the objectives of why we're here and leverage the latest climate science to enhance understanding. We'll be talking more about the climate science today. We had some great discussions yesterday. Awareness of climate information and services. Early warnings for all is obviously a key part of this. We'll come back to that and just a recap of the panel session. And of course, collaboration. Collaboration is key. So just keep these objectives in mind as you go out to your cafes and you have your conversations in the coffee break. This is great to meet, but we want hopefully some actions to come out of these discussions too. Just very briefly, we had some great conversations yesterday. And I was looking at the early warnings for all to understand a bit more about what it's meant by early and in terms of the objectives, and we'll hopefully hear more today on that stuff. And it talks about the last mile and to me the last mile. This last mile is actually most of the work. And we talk a lot about that translation, the valleys of death, getting from the climate science into the end users via government met services or via stakeholders or via researchers in the community. And some fantastic discussions yesterday on some of the specific sectors, food security, amazing stuff going on there. Questions about the timescales, questions about the data that's required to do some of these studies, and it's a recurring theme about the data. What data do we need, and how might we share it? Whether it be crop yield data or it be sea level data. Obviously sharing sea level data. It came up in Hazel's talk, and we were discussing offline about it would really help the science and the understanding and the predictions and projections if we could share more things like simple stuff. Allegedly simple stuff. Sea level is a relatively simple measurement. Imagine things like radar data exchange are much more complicated, much more voluminous, much more issues of quality control. Start with some low-hanging fruit. Are there some low-hanging fruit we can consider in terms of data sharing? Sea level data, for example, from the region. Food security, we talked a lot about human health and the regional heat, and lots of discussions about heat waves and heat indices, and again, I still don't think we're talking about the same thing when we talk about heat waves, for example. To a meteorologist, a heat wave is a meteorological thing. It's nothing to do with impacts. And that's certainly the view from my experience in the UK. Of course, it's the impacts that count. It's the impacts, but the impacts are so diverse. Even personally, we have different decisions we make in terms of different things we might do. I gave the example, I talked to John Nairn after. I'm one person. I have different decision makings when it comes to heat and what I'm going to do. If I'm going to run, I'm going to go to the shopping centre, or I'm going to get on a bike. I'll look at different aspects of the heat and the humidity. If it's too humid and not much wind, I'll get on a bike, I won't run. That's just me. So imagine all the different users and vulnerable communities and different needs of all of us, whether it be individuals. I think this is something I hope we can have more discussions on, because I think we really, I don't think it's going to be one size fits all. We can have generic, but at the end of the day, I think Jason was talking about 200 vulnerability indices, depending on, and you could break it down by individuals, I'm sure, even further. So that, to me, that's a real challenge. Some great videos from Jason and Sandeep gave a really nice, I thought, talk on the regional climate projections. From over that CCRS hat on, of course, regional climate projections We've spent 3 or 4 years, that data is there. We really want to work with people to use that data in terms of climate impacts, both, of course, in Singapore with Singapore agencies, but also in the region. There's 8 or 9 petabytes of data sitting there on a supercomputer a few miles away from here. We really want to work with others to ensure that can be used. So Sandy gave a great overview of some of the tools, etc., and what the urban planning plans are for the UN Habitat. And again, I mentioned Hazel's gave a nice overview of the quite ambitious plans already being implemented, as Hazel described. So some great overviews from around in the region, different views, and let's keep the conversations going. Just finally, we had the panel yesterday. I've talked about a couple of the issues that came up in terms of early. Sorry, Chris, for putting that question at the end there, but I keep asking it. I know, and I agree. I agree that it's the end user doesn't care. The end user doesn't care. Call climate services from the next 30 minutes to the next 100 years, but I think there's an issue about how we coordinate internally, perhaps in the community. You know, the high impact weather project has ended after 10 years of weather research focusing on impacts, high impact, bridging the valleys of death. That's where that phrase came from, was the high impact weather project, Brian Golding and others. And if climate services wants to engage and get into then let's just make sure it all fits together. But some great answers and some statements of interests and plans from the various members of the panel. And thanks for the questions, by the way. We need to keep them coming in. There'll be some more today, so please continue to engage, whether it's via Padlet or via the conversations over coffee. And it'd be great if we can have some actions that come out of this that we can take forward, and we can say this happened because we had that meeting in Singapore in September 2024. So with that, I'll just thank you for your time, and I'll hand back to Trina to start the show for the day. Thank you.